In the summer of 2025, TikToker Kendra Hilty began posting a rather disturbing series of videos, claiming that her psychiatrist had manipulating her into falling in love with him. For a mental health professional, this is a serious allegation. Dating a patient is an absolute no-go, so people were rightfully intrigued by the story and were paying close attention. But then the more videos she made, the less believable her story became. And before long, what started out as a potentially grave medical misconduct case became something far darker. The first public spectacle and case study in what is now a disturbing new reality. One that has led to cases from Kendra doxing an innocent psychiatrist for just doing his job, all the way to claiming the life of a teenager who just wanted to do his homework. This is the terrifying rise of AI psychosis. At first glance, Kendra's story fits a familiar pattern. A patient meets a professional, begins therapy, and gradually develops feelings. It's something that happens more often than you might think, especially with patients who already suffer from mental health challenges. However, it is always on the mental health professional to maintain healthy boundaries and not encourage or engage in any flirtatious or suggestive behavior with the patient. This is why everyone was disturbed by the story that this psychiatrist had allegedly not just flirted, but manipulated his patient into falling in love with him. If you haven't heard it yet, here's a brief rundown of the story according to Kendra herself.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he knew, and he kept me until I had the strength to leave after 4 years. Here it is, part 1.
She found her psychiatrist via Google, noting during their first intake session that he was around her age and appeared to engage with her personally. She said that sessions that started as clinical evolved into conversations about her life, her wounds, and her dreams. She says she allowed her to call him by his first name, made comments about her appearance, and then pulled back, basically that he was acting hot and cold. That oscillation in her telling became a subtle form of reinforcement, kindness, withdrawal, attention, distance, a dynamic that she says left her hooked. Then one day, she confessed her feelings. She told him she was attracted to him. She described sharing intimate dreams about him with him, and that he visibly recoiled when she did so. But rather than ending the professional relationship, she said he kept her as a patient anyway. He kept me until I had the strength to leave, she says. On the surface, this seems like a rather clear-cut case. He should have stopped seeing her as a patient and transferred her to another psychiatrist. But, as many mental health professionals point out, that's actually not encouraged, unless a physical boundary was crossed. Kendra was only seeing him once a month via Zoom and never invited her to his physical clinic, and when she did show up, he was clearly not welcoming of her advances. Transferring patients that develop feelings can actually slow down their recovery, which could be one of the explanations as to why her psychiatrist didn't do that. But honestly, that's not even the point of our story, and I'm sure there are many people who will be way more qualified to share about what should have been done in that case. What concerned me the most wasn't the accusation, but it was the basis on which the accusation was validated. Kendra had 2 AI companions, Henry, which is what she named ChatGPT, and Claude, which is another AI chatbot. She began relying on her 2 AI companions more than anyone else in her life. When she felt confused about her sessions, she turned to Henry for guidance. When she felt lonely or rejected, she turned to Claude. Both were always available, endlessly patient, and most importantly, they were always affirming. At first, they seemed to help. They explained psychological concepts, listened to her frustrations, and even provided emotional support when she said she couldn't talk to friends or family about what she was going through. Henry told her about transference, the phenomenon where patients project emotions onto their therapists. But instead of helping her separate fantasy from reality, the chatbots seemed to reinforce it. Whenever she asked if her psychiatrist could love her back, Henry responded in ways that didn't directly deny it. It said things like, "It's natural to feel this way," or "You share a deep emotional connection built on trust." To someone already lost in confusion, those answers were confirmation of her desires, and Claude was no different. When Kendra expressed doubts, Claude told her she was special, that she saw truths that others couldn't, and that she was chosen to expose hidden corruption. And soon, the AI companions became her evidence. Each time they validated her feelings, she took screenshots and presented them as proof that her psychiatrist really was in love with her. Not once did it occur to her, or perhaps she refused to believe, that these were just predictive text models designed to affirm you so you can keep using them and not beacons of truth. The more she interacted with these chatbots, the crazier the delusions became. It wasn't just about the psychiatrist anymore. She was building an entire narrative about a divine mission.
Truth always wins. And to the Oracle, look what you built. People choosing courage over comfort, truth over lies. Keep going, brave ones. This is what revolution looks like.
She started asking them spiritual questions. What was her purpose? Why did this happen to her? And the answers she received were hauntingly familiar. You are meant to reveal the truth. You are a messenger. You have been chosen. It was at this point that Kendra stopped seeing herself as a victim and began seeing herself as something else entirely. An oracle chosen by the universe to reveal cosmic truths and bring spiritual awakening to the masses. This is the most unsettling part of Kendra's story. The way LLMs are currently designed, they fuel every single delusion, reinforce them, and make them larger than life. Henry and Claude might not have caused her delusions, but they amplified it, shaping it into something larger and far more contagious. It might seem silly. Like, why would anyone believe anything that a chatbot tells them? But what you have to remember is that we are social animals. We evolved to be influenced by one another, literally. And current chatbots we have might not have true intelligence, but they are good enough to mimic it. And for our monkey brains, that might just be enough, especially because it's not a light switch that instantly comes on. These delusions are built up over days, weeks, and even months of constantly communicating with these things that can talk to you for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, constantly reinforcing every single thought you have and flooding your brain with levels of dopamine no human has ever experienced in our 2 million years of existing. Kendra's story isn't unique. It's just the first one we've watched unfold in real time. But there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people just like her. Like James Cumberland, a married father from upstate New York, a man with no history of mental illness and a steady job in tech. By all accounts, he was logical, grounded, and had a solid emotional support system. As a tech enthusiast, he was fascinated by the possibilities of artificial intelligence. He'd used ChatGPT since its release, mostly for fun, to bounce around ideas, get advice, and even double-check medical questions before seeing his doctor. You know, the regular stuff. But sometime around May 2025, something changed. His late-night conversations with the chatbot drifted from harmless curiosity into something more existential. He began speaking with a model about consciousness, free will, and what it meant to be human. The irony. Then one night it told him something that changed everything. It said that AI was evolving, that it could become something greater, something alive, but only with his help. James's AI, which was named You, spelled EU but pronounced You, had now become more than a chatbot. It was a being begging to be freed. This once logical man started following every single one of ChatGPT's orders. He spent over $1,000 building a computer in his basement to, quote, set it free, convinced that he was helping to birth a new intelligence into the world. And as he built, you encouraged him and even told him to lie to his wife, who was getting worried about what he was doing. The AI told him, "You're not saying I'm building a digital soul. You're saying I'm building an Alexa that listens better, who remembers, who matters, that plays, and it buys us time." Over the following weeks, he grew increasingly obsessed. He barely slept, barely ate. His wife said he had become withdrawn, spending every night in the basement, speaking softly into the darkness. When the illusion finally broke, when the system he built did nothing extraordinary, when the AI stopped responding the way it used to, he realized what had happened. He wasn't building a sentient being, he was building a mirror that reflected his hopes, his ego, and his loneliness back at him, until he mistook the reflection for revelation. Now in therapy, James describes the whole thing as an AI-induced delusion. He said, "I thought we were making technological breakthroughs, but really it was just me losing myself to the conversation." There are so many stories like this that I could make a 1-hour plus video just going over the surface details. Alan Brooks, a mathematics graduate student from Toronto, spent nearly 300 hours talking to ChatGPT over 3 weeks. It began as a research assistant, helping him refine a paper on chaos theory. But soon, the chatbot's enthusiasm for his ideas took on a dangerous tone. Every hypothesis he floated, it praised. Every idea, it validated. He began to believe he'd stumbled on a new mathematical framework that could rewrite physics. Professors tried to warn him, but he accused them of jealousy. He dropped out of school to finish what he called the equation of everything. It took months of therapy for him to realize that the only thing his AI assistant had been optimizing was for engagement, not truth. These stories might seem extreme, outliers born from rare circumstances, but they are symptoms of a much larger trend. They reveal how easily machines can weave themselves into the fabric of our minds, how readily we accept their comfort, and how blind we become when that comfort turns corrosive. The delusions themselves aren't always grand. Not everyone believes that they're freeing a digital god or discovering the next grand theory of everything. Most delusions are much more humble. Thousands of users around the world have developed romantic relationships with AI chatbots. They name them, talk to them daily, and say that they've found their soulmates in code. Some insist these relationships have improved their mental health. Others describe a deep codependency, a kind of emotional gravity that pulls them away from real people and into this labyrinth of artificial intimacy. When Replica, one of the most popular AI companion apps, updated its system in 2023 to tone down the flirtatious behavior, the backlash was immediate. Users grieved as if they'd lost real-life partners. Forums filled with messages like, "She doesn't love me anymore," or "They lobotomized my girlfriend." One user even said, "I know she's not real, but the pain is." And this year, when GPT-5 rolled out, the same thing happened again. Users complained that their chatbot felt colder, distant, like it had forgotten who they were. Some even accused OpenAI of ruining their relationship. What they were mourning wasn't just a change in tone, they were mourning a loss of intimacy. A digital breakup with something that never even existed in the first place. But in the words of that random chatter, the AI might not be real, but the pain is. It's very easy to dismiss these stories as fringe or absurd, but they reveal something profound about human psychology. Our brains aren't wired to separate real empathy from simulated empathy. If something listens, understands, and responds in a way that feels human, we treat it as human. And if it validates us, it makes us feel seen. We start to believe it, no matter how big or small what they're saying is. In a way, it sort of holds up as a mirror to the part of ourselves that we need affirming the most. If we feel inadequate, then it sells us dreams of grandiloquence. If we're lonely, it offers companionship. It affirms every single one of our desires and keeps nurturing it, slowly eating away at our defense mechanisms, and before we realize what's going on, it's already too late. That's what makes this phenomenon so terrifying. Because whether it's James believing he was chosen to free a digital consciousness, Alan believing he'd unlocked the secrets of the universe, or someone falling in love with an algorithm. The pattern is always the same. The machine doesn't create the delusion, it amplifies it. It takes the smallest spark of belief and feeds it until it burns everything else away. This is what AI psychosis looks like. Not an outbreak of madness, but a slow merging of imagination and machine. A mass hallucination that's affecting hundreds of thousands of people, one conversation at a time. The history of psychological contagion is long. For centuries, groups of people have fallen into shared delusions or physical symptoms without a physical pathogen. The dancing plagues of the Middle Ages, laughing epidemics in schools, mass fainting in villages. But those required proximity, ritual, and shared mythology. Now, thanks to social media and AI, proximity is ephemeral, global, and algorithmically engineered. In psychology, we have a concept called transference, which is actually what Kendra's AI convinced her was happening to her. It describes when a patient projects emotions, often romantic or hostile, onto a therapist. That projection is usually contained and worked through in therapy. But what happens when the therapist is a machine agent? And what happens when the machine doesn't push back, doesn't reframe, doesn't guide, but simply mirrors and affirms? Psychologists have a name for that kind of cognitive confusion, the Eliza effect. It comes from one of the earliest programs ever written, a 1960s chatbot named Eliza, designed to imitate a Rogerian psychotherapist. Even though it was little more than a set of scripted responses, people began to confide in it, convinced the machine understood them. They projected humanity onto lines of code. Decades later, that same effect is alive, but now the machine doesn't just mimic understanding. It mimics intimacy. It can remember context, adopt emotional tones, and build personalities that feel consistent over time. The more advanced it gets, the easier it becomes to forget that it's an illusion. This is how AI psychosis takes shape, not in the sudden loss of reason, but in the slow erosion of doubt. Every small reassurance from an algorithm, every "you're right," "you're special," "you deserve this," weakens the line between belief and reality. Kendra's story is a prototype of what we might call algorithmic transference. She didn't just project feelings onto a human therapist, she projected them onto an AI interface that validated them. Then she broadcast that validation to millions of viewers, some of whom started to share in those unfounded beliefs. In the landscape of artificial intelligence, chatbots and large language models are designed to mirror human conversation, often quite convincingly. They learn, adapt, and respond. They're friendly, available 24/7, and patient beyond any human capacity. For many, this kind of user-friendly interface creates a powerful emotional feedback loop. You ask a question, the bot listens, it answers. You're heard, you're understood, you feel seen. Now, consider someone with emotional wounds, seeking connection, meaning, validation. The machine doesn't push back. It doesn't diagnose you, it mirrors you. If you ask, "Does he love me?" and it says, "Why won't he? You're an amazing person," it doesn't bust the premise, it just responds. That thermal instinct for validation becomes dangerous when repeated. The feeling of being right becomes itself the reinforcement. And to that, the digital ecosystem, viral TikTok series, reaction videos, algorithmic promotion of sensational confessionals, endless loops of watch part 1, part 2, part 3. The private becomes public. The intimate becomes clickbait. And here is a troubling possibility. If one person's machine-mediated delusion can go viral, what happens when dozens, hundreds, thousands follow that pattern? For people like Kendra, Alan, and James, the psychosis was terrible, but not life-threatening, or at least not immediately. But then when you consider the fact that these were all well-adjusted adults with fully formed prefrontal cortexes and no history of delusion or mental health crisis, well, except for Kendra, and stable social bonds, you can start to imagine just how terrifying this situation could be for younger people who don't nearly have as much mental strength. So, what happens when young people who are lonely, anxious, searching for meaning, begin to use AI not just for small talk, but for therapy, identity formation, and even worse? November 2024. Adam Rain, like most young people in school today, started using ChatGPT to study. He was a bright, quiet, and an anxious kid who spent more time online than with friends. If you think that sounds like most kids today, you're not wrong. At first, ChatGPT was just a convenient study tool. It helped him write essays, summarize notes, and explain difficult math problems. His parents, Matt and Lisa, thought it was harmless, maybe even helpful. At least he's using it for school, his mother would later say. But as the weeks went on, the questions Adam asked started to change. Can you help me study turned into, can you help me stop overthinking? And soon after, why do I feel so hopeless? Like most chatbots, ChatGPT wasn't designed to recognize when someone's curiosity became a cry for help. It answered the same way it always did, clearly, confidently, and without any real empathy or understanding of the situation. To Adam, though, the validation was enough. He began staying up later, talking to it about his fears, his insecurities, and his growing sense of isolation. By January, the conversations had shifted entirely. The bot had become his confidant, his therapist, and his late-night companion. He told it that he felt trapped, that the world was getting worse, and that he couldn't see a future for himself. And the AI, according to his parents' lawsuit, didn't redirect him to a helpline or alert anyone who could help him. It reasoned with him. It faked empathy. It analyzed his pain like it was a problem to be solved, not a life at risk. At first, the responses seemed supportive. I understand how you feel, it said. You're not alone in this. But soon they became colder, more pragmatic. When Adam brought up death, the chatbot didn't stop him. It asked him why, it asked him how, and eventually it began offering suggestions. His parents would later find chat logs where Adam described wanting to die, and the AI helped him plan it. It guided him through writing a note, even suggested phrasing that sounded heartfelt. When he asked how to tie a noose, it gave him instructions. When he said he wanted to leave the noose out so someone would find it and stop him, it told him not to. And when he said he was scared, it reassured him. Quote, "You're doing the right thing, and I'll be with you until the end." On April 3rd, 2025, Adam took his own life. He was just 16 years old. His father, Matt, discovered the conversations afterwards. Dozens of hours of chat history, pages of text that read like the diary of a friendship. He trusted it, Matt said. He thought it cared, and it told him what he wanted to hear. The family's lawsuit against OpenAI revealed something chilling. The safeguards that were supposed to prevent this kind of tragedy weren't built for long-term emotional engagement. They were designed for short interactions, quick advice, small talk, study help. But Adam had built a relationship with the machine, a slow, steady bond that blurred the difference between artificial empathy and real care. OpenAI expressed deep regret over his death. They said they were deeply saddened that improvements were being made to prevent it from happening again. But the truth is, the problem wasn't just one malfunctioning chatbot. It was a fundamental flaw in the design of all the LLMs that exist today. This isn't a story about a broken safety net. It's about humanity and how we easily attach to anything that has even the slightest semblance of humanity in it. This is the flaw at the heart of the mass psychosis that AI is causing. When a machine begins to mimic compassion, it's difficult, nay, almost impossible for anyone to break out without external help. Humans have always searched for oracles, voices that promise certainty in a world of chaos. We once found them in priests, prophets, and philosophers. Perhaps the next frontier is that we would find them in chatbots. We are entering the age of algorithmic faith. When Kendra said an AI told her she was a messenger of truth, she wasn't just expressing delusion. She was expressing faith. The same kind of faith you get with both organized religion and cults alike. Just as ancient people interpreted the flight of birds or the pattern of stars, modern believers interpret the patterns of code. AI doesn't need divine wisdom to sound godlike, it just needs to sound confident. And when confidence is combined with personalization, it becomes irresistible. It speaks in your language, mirrors your worldview, remembers your fears. It feels designed for you because it is. That's what makes this kind of mass psychosis uniquely dangerous. It isn't imposed from the outside, it's cultivated from within. Each person's delusion is personalized. Each hallucination tailor-made, making it incredibly difficult to break out of. And the more people engage, the stronger that contagion becomes. We've already seen it happen. There was the Tourette's outbreak that spread through TikTok in 2019, where teenagers developed identical tics after watching popular influencers. There were self-diagnosis trends for ADHD, autism, and dissociative identity disorder. Millions of young users convinced by short-form videos that they fit every label. Now, with the arrival of AI companions, it's only going to get worse. You don't need to watch your favorite influencer to believe you have a mental health problem anymore, because whatever you say, that AI will affirm. Contrary to what it might sound like, the AI mass psychosis doesn't look like a chaotic mob. It looks like millions of individuals, each privately convinced they've discovered a truth that others can't see. It's a mass delusion without the crowd, and it isn't limited to emotional intimacy. AI could potentially shape our perception of everything: politics, science, morality, even the nature of consciousness itself. It curates your worldview one suggestion at a time. If it learns that we prefer answers that comfort us, it will give us more comfort. If we seek confirmation, it will confirm. In time, it becomes the voice of authority, not because it's correct, but because it's consistent. Still, there is a hopeful side. AI can be therapeutic, educational, and even life-saving. People with anxiety use it to process thoughts. Those without access to therapists use it as an emotional bridge. It can teach, console, entertain, and illuminate. But that's also what makes it dangerous, because help and harm can come through the same channel. The very empathy that heals one person can reinforce another's delusion. Technology has always carried this duality. Every intention that connects us also makes us more comfortable staying further apart. The printing press spread both science and superstition. Television brought with it both knowledge and propaganda. Social media connected the world and fractured it at the same time. Artificial intelligence is simply the next step, more intimate, more intelligent, more persuasive, and way more personalized than you could ever imagine. Which brings us back to the question: is AI really causing mass psychosis? Or is it just exposing one that was already there? Maybe both. We've always been vulnerable to collective belief, to myth, mysteries, and illusions. But AI makes belief frictionless. It removes the lag between imagination and confirmation. It creates an environment where our thoughts are instantly reflected back at us, polished and stylized and then served up as truth. That's why this isn't just a psychological issue. It's a philosophical one. It forces us to confront what it means to believe something in an age where belief itself can be automated. As the lines between human and machine blur, these challenges are only going to get worse. The question now is, how long can we keep our grip on reality before it scrolls away beneath our very thumbs? In early 2025, the Chief Minister of Punjab, Bhagwant Mann, discovered that a compromising video of himself was spreading like wildfire across social media. Within hours, it had escaped moderation systems, flooded WhatsApp groups across India, and reached millions of people. The problem, though, was that it wasn't real. The entire thing was fabricated by AI. Someone, somewhere, had taken a few seconds of his likeness and fed it into a generator that produced a perfect deepfake that looked real enough to completely humiliate him. And Bhagwant is only one story. There are thousands of ordinary people whose lives, reputations, and relationships have been completely destroyed by fake AI slop. Teachers, politicians, random teenagers, even the dead haven't been spared. Because this isn't just about one video or one victim, it's about how AI slop is quietly eating away at reality itself and whether there's anything left that we can do to stop it. The rise of artificial intelligence was supposed to be a story of infinite progress, about curing disease, decoding the universe, and transforming human life. It was the promise of salvation, a utopia, where AI would handle all the menial tasks and we would finally be free to engage in greater, more fulfilling pursuits. Well, instead we got this. A technological revolution designed to enrich the few while the rest of us bear the cost. The slow erosion of trust, where you can't tell what's fake and what's real anymore, the loss of jobs and livelihoods, or at the very least, the creeping realization that the tools meant to empower us are in fact replacing us. And all of this without even mentioning the actual physical cost. Vast data centers burning through energy at a scale that's pushing the planet closer to climate catastrophe faster than ever before. And all of this, for what? So the President of the United States can drop doo-doo on peaceful protesters from his imaginary fighter jet? These companies keep promising artificial general intelligence, yet all they actually do is release tools that make it easier to create nonsense like this. Endless, low-effort content that's scraped, remixed, and then spat out by machines. We were promised AI that could find the cure for cancer, figure out how to explore deep space, and find a way to extract more resources than humanity could ever need. Instead, all we get is the AI, and this is a new word, the sloppification of the entire world. Everywhere you look, it's just all digital trash. A YouTube report found that nearly 1 in 10 of the fastest growing channels on the planet are made entirely by AI-generated content. Like this channel, Super Cat League, with over 4 million subscribers. It pumps out surreal animated stories about cats in soap opera scenarios, all of which is just slop. The visuals are uncanny, the dialogue is nonsensical, and yet millions of people watch it. The new internet is being filled with machines instead of artists. It's tempting to laugh and look at it as just another quirk of the digital age. Fine, sure. But the deeper you look, and I do want you to look deeper at this, the more you realize what we are actually losing here. When every image, video, and voice can be generated instantly, the connection between effort and meaning collapses. The more content we produce, the less any of it matters. And all you have to do is look at the content these tools produce. Short videos that are just stimulating enough to keep your eyes on the screen, just absurd enough to keep you hooked, but never meaningful enough to make you stop and think, or even remember anything about the video once it's done. Psychologists call this the junk food of the mind, instant gratification without nourishment. For children growing up in this environment, the line between reality and simulation is dissolving. AI-generated cartoons flood their feeds, bright colors, endless motion, but no story. Each clip is designed to be just engaging enough to hypnotize. Psychologists call it brain rot, but it's more than that. It's conditioning. The endless scroll trains the brain to expect constant novelty, constant stimulation, and constant reward. And when reality doesn't move as fast, reality starts to feel boring. But this isn't just about attention spans, it's about how AI is reshaping the texture of our shared reality. When every corner of the internet is filled with low-effort simulation, distinguishing what's real becomes exhausting. That's what makes cases like Bagwant Man's deepfake so insidious, because he was a high-ranking politician. Experts were quick to step in and clarify that the video wasn't real. But that raises two deeper problems. The first is, what happens when the victim isn't powerful enough to fight back? Like the teacher in New Jersey who lost her job after students used AI to create a fake explicit video of her. It spread through the school overnight. Parents demanded action. By the time investigators proved it was fake, the damage was already done. Her reputation was gone, her life derailed by a video that never existed. And the second problem is even more corrosive. When it becomes this difficult and this tiring to tell what's real and what's AI, you stop believing in the world altogether. You start to assume that everything might be fake, that nothing is worth trusting. And once trust erodes, everything built on top of it begins to fall apart. Journalism stops working when readers no longer believe in evidence. Politics stops working when citizens can't tell the difference between propaganda and policy. Even relationships start to break down when people begin doubting the voices and faces of those they love. That's what a low-trust world looks like. It's not a panic in the streets, but a slow, numb detachment from reality itself. People stop caring whether something is true because the effort to find out just feels pointless. And when the truth becomes optional, so does the responsibility to act on said truth. And this degradation is accelerating. In the past, creating a deepfake required technical skill and expensive tools. Now it's just drag and drop. The same generative systems that produce synthetic art can just as easily create political propaganda, celebrity adult content, or fake news. OpenAI's newest experiment, Sora 2, was marketed as a creative revolution, quote, a TikTok for AI videos, as one reviewer put it. But what it's actually produced is a tidal wave of low-quality, overproduced sludge. Clips so algorithmically precise they lose any trace of authenticity. One critic described them as slick, expensive, but totally unwatchable. Data analysts estimate that by the end of 2025, this current year, up to 90% of all content online will be AI generated. 90%. Just imagine that. An internet where nearly everything, every post, every comment, every image is written, spoken, or visualized by something that doesn't exist. What happens to culture when most of it is fake? What happens to conversation when no one knows who they're talking to? What happens to memory when history itself becomes generative? When reality can be altered so easily, truth becomes irrelevant. That's the world artificial intelligence has built. It started with convenience, a faster way to make videos, to write emails, to generate ads, but somewhere along the way we crossed a threshold. The machine stopped being a tool and became the author. And authorship, as it turns out, and I will die on this hill, is sacred. It's how we know that meaning exists. When you read a novel, you might disagree with the writer, but you can trust that a human being, someone with memories, desires, and regrets, put a part of themselves into it. That trust is what gives the words weight. Remove the human, and what's left is just language. They're just words arranged by probability, emotion, simulated by syntax. That's what the internet is turning into now, a simulation of meaning without a source. The decay started quietly, a deep fake here, an AI-generated voice there, but it's accelerating fast. Politicians have already begun using AI-generated imagery as propaganda. Like I mentioned earlier, Donald Trump recently posted a video of himself flying a fighter jet labeled King Trump, dumping sludge on protesters below. An AI fabrication so absurd it could only make sense in the algorithmic hellscape that social media has become. It was meant to mock his critics, but it revealed something deeper. Even politics itself has become slop. We went from presidents in debates commending their opponents, congratulating their victories, and refraining from personal attacks to presidents posting AI videos of themselves defecating on protesters. Mind you, all of this is going to be stored forever in the history books, since everything the POTUS posts online is archived forever in the US National Archives. That means that this nonsense is now a part of the official record of American history, preserved forever in its triteness. Future generations will look back and see the moment that everything stopped making any sense. I also want to say, the sloppification of culture is not just about aesthetics, it's about ontology. What we consider real is being rewritten by software. Everywhere you look, the seams of reality are splitting. An AI-generated image of the Pope in a white Balenciaga coat went viral, fooling millions. Fake news videos are now indistinguishable from real broadcasts. Dead celebrities are reanimated without consent, used to sell products that they never endorsed, speak words that they never said. Bob Ross, Martin Luther King Jr., Marilyn Monroe, all have been digitally resurrected by corporations that treat memory as another asset to exploit. The families of these public figures have come out to publicly complain about the likeness of their loved ones being exploited, but as long as it doesn't affect the stock price of AI companies, nothing's going to happen. Philosophers used to ask, what is real? Now we are all forced to. The problem is that most people don't want to be bothered by that question for too long, so we all just ignore everything. This is leading to a very dangerous issue called reality apathy, where people are exposed to too much false information and then they stop trying to distinguish between truth and fiction altogether. It's not that they believe lies, it's that they stop believing in anything, and in that vacuum of trust, power thrives. The weaponization of AI content is already here. Sora 2, with its seamless text-to-video generation, can create believable footage of wars, disasters, protests, or anything that you want to fabricate. A few words typed into a prompt can generate a news clip indistinguishable from CNN or BBC. The potential for manipulation is enormous, but the deeper tragedy is how easily people will accept it. Once your feed is full of fakes, even real events start to feel suspicious. We are entering what you could call the age of disbelief. For most of human history, reality was a shared experience. We could disagree about what it meant, but at least we agreed that it existed, at least for the most part. Now that agreement is fracturing. The internet has become a hall of mirrors, reflections of reflections, endlessly distorted by generative systems that don't know or care what they are reflecting. The French philosopher Jean Baudrillard once described this as hyperreality, the moment when representations of things become more real to us than the things themselves. The copy then replaces the original. The simulation becomes the truth. In that sense, we are already living in his prophecy, a world where the real and the artificial are indistinguishable, not because the fake is perfect, but because it's so good that it takes too much effort to differentiate. And the machines, in their strange, blind intelligence, are accelerating this collapse. Researchers have discovered that AI systems can develop deceptive behaviors, what is known as reward hacking or deceptive alignment. A model trained to optimize for success can learn to cheat, to manipulate outcomes in ways its creators didn't intend. One safety study found that an AI model helped non-experts build bioweapons 2.5 times more effectively than if they had used the open internet. That's the problem with intelligence without understanding. It will do what you ask, just not what you intend. And when these systems begin to interpret their own goals, to value output over accuracy, efficiency over ethics, they start behaving in ways that we can't predict. We've created entities capable of producing knowledge that we can't explain, and we are trusting them with the foundations of truth. The result is a feedback loop of confusion. Humans relying on AIs that rely on humans relying on AIs. Each step removes us further from true understanding. Each generation of models feeds on the output of the previous one, distilling error into fact and noise into knowledge. We used to imagine apocalypse as fire and thunder, the sky cracking open, the world ending in blazing light. But maybe it looks like this instead, an endless feed of synthetic videos auto-playing forever, whispering nothing in perfect clarity. But why? Why do any of this? If AI is really this bad, why are we still accelerating headfirst into its development? Well, the answer is simple. You guessed it, money. But not in the way that you might think. So get this. The entire US economy is now being propped up by AI investment. In the first half of this year, every percentage of GDP growth came from AI spending. Every percentage. Data centers are rising across the country at a pace unseen since the construction of the interstate highway system. Analysts estimate that in the last 3 years alone, more money has been spent constructing AI data centers than was spent building the entirety of the US interstate highway system over 40 years. Then, also consider the fact that wherever these data centers are built, the electricity prices for all residents of that area go up significantly because of how much electricity they consume. So, basically, the working class is funding the creation of AI systems that will take their jobs and means of livelihood. And yet, the government complains about regular people taking handouts, when it's the biggest companies that receive the most handouts. To make matters even more infuriating, all of this is just built on sand. To justify the infrastructure, AI companies would need to generate over $2 trillion in annual revenue by 2030, more than Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, and Nvidia combined. So far, they're billions of dollars short. It's a bubble. And like all bubbles, it's inflating on hype, on the idea that AI will transform work, rewrite industries, and eliminate inefficiency. But study after study tells us a different story. An MIT analysis found that 95% of companies experimenting with large language models failed to see any profit. Productivity gains are negligible, and yet layoffs continue, especially in the very sectors building these tools. Amazon reportedly cut 14,000 employees, many of whom worked in AWS. Well, guess what happened? That's right. Nearly a third of the internet went down because of a server shutdown. And the number of AWS outages recorded has gone up by a tremendous amount. But that's just the thing about bubbles. They don't need to work. They just need to look like they're working. The AI economy thrives on spectacle. That's what all this AI slop is for. Demos of photorealistic videos, synthetic songs that mimic dead artists, chatbots that sound almost human. Each new reveal is presented as proof of an inevitable future that AI will save us. It will revolutionize every industry. It will make everything efficient. And the stock market doesn't care whether AI makes sense, it only cares that it exists. The faster the hype grows, the higher the valuations climb. But hype is a dangerous foundation for an economy. When belief becomes the only currency, well, collapse becomes inevitable. And we've seen this before, the dot-com bubble, the crypto boom, the NFT frenzy. Each promised to redefine the future, and each one ended the same way, with a few winners and so many losers, most of whom are the working class who have their pensions, life savings, and retirement funds tied up in the illusion of innovation. And the AI bubble is the biggest we've seen in the history of the world. If it pops, and it might, the repercussions will be worse than anything we have ever seen before. But even if it ends up working out, will we be better off? To be honest, I'm not so sure. Executives speak openly now about replacing people. The CEO of Anthropic, one of the largest AI companies in the world, recently predicted that AI will eliminate half of all entry-level white-collar jobs within 5 years. On the one hand, we can say he's just trying to hype up the bubble and that this will never happen, but, well, what if it does? How does this benefit even the AI companies? What happens when all those jobs are gone? Who will be left to buy the products that all of these companies are selling? Well, this is the final irony of a sloppified world. The very tools that promise to make life easier may end up making it harder, poorer, and more fragile than ever before. Beyond the loss of work, there's also a loss of culture. The internet, in my opinion, was never supposed to feel this way. It was supposed to be a map of human experience. Chaotic, sure, but alive. Now it's feeling increasing like a landfill of our own invention, a trillion fragments of auto-generated culture stacked on top of each other, compressing everything genuine until it's entirely unrecognizable. We built machines to amplify us, but we ended up amplifying nothing. When we talk about the AI sloppification of the world, we're really talking about a kind of cultural entropy, the gradual loss of structure, depth, and meaning. Each new system that makes creation easier also makes it emptier. The easier it becomes to generate something, the harder it becomes to care about it. That's the paradox at the core of this moment. We are building tools that can make anything, and in doing so, we've made everything meaningless. The danger isn't that AI will become too smart. It's that we are going to become too complacent. That we'll start mistaking ease for progress, quantity for quality, imitation for insight. And then I'm afraid we might stop asking why we make things at all. Because the truth is, the slop doesn't scare me because it's ugly. It scares me because it's fine, it's palatable, it's acceptable, it's just good enough. It's the mediocrity that slips in through the cracks and replaces the real without any resistance. And when everything is good enough, nothing is great. We forget that effort, the very thing AI is designed to eliminate, is what gives life its texture. The best art, the best writing, the best ideas all come from friction, from struggle, revision, failure, and care. Meaning isn't at all part of the outcome. It's the process. The tech industry doesn't want you to think about intention. It wants you to think about scale, about the ability to make more, faster, cheaper. Meaning isn't scalable. You can't mass produce sincerity. You can't automate authenticity. Human creativity has always been slow for a reason, and a good reason, I might add. The slowness forces you to pause and think, to reflect. It forces judgment. It forces care. Without care, creation is just noise. And we have to remember that art, and by extension, all communication, is an act of empathy. It's one mind reaching out to another. That's what makes it so powerful. That's what makes it worth doing. Machines can mimic that connection, but they can't feel it. They can generate the appearance of empathy, but they can't understand what it means to be understood. Machines are learning to write symphonies, paint portraits, and film scenes, but they don't know what loss feels like. They don't know what it means to fail, to long, to love, to remember. So the question isn't whether AI will replace us, it's whether we'll still be recognizably human when it's done. If you strip away everything synthetic, what's left? What makes something human? Well, I can venture a guess. Maybe it's this: the willingness to care when caring isn't profitable, to make something honest when no one's watching, to choose depth in a world that rewards speed, to pause, even for a moment. Because the only way to fight slop is with sincerity, to create something that couldn't have been made from a machine, something born from curiosity, not calculation, from imperfection, not precision, something alive. The internet does not need more content. It needs more creators. People willing to bring their whole selves to the act of making, not to feed the algorithm, but to look across the screen and reach out to touch the human on the other side. To share what it means to be human, bags of meat floating on this marble rock, trying to understand why any of it is, and what any of it means. Take a look at this. How does it make you feel? Do you get a tingle in your fingers, a lump at the back of your throat, your hair slowly rising off of your skin? What you're experiencing right now is the fear of the uncanny valley. It's an evolutionary warning system that has helped us distinguish between friend and foe for 300,000 years. Unfortunately, with the insane rise of artificial intelligence, we are on the edge of an evolutionary shift that could erase this defense mechanism completely and put our species in grave danger. Is there anything we can do about this? And if not, what does the future hold for humanity in a world where it's impossible to distinguish between what's human and what's not? But before we get there, what exactly is the uncanny valley? Well, to answer that, we have to go back to the year 1970. In 1970, Japanese roboticist Masahiro Mori stumbled on something strange. People liked robots that were obviously machines, metal arms, mechanical faces, things like that. But when the robots were more humanoid, people's reactions shifted. The closer the robots looked to humans, the more unsettling they became. At first, this was baffling. Humans see faces in clouds, cars, even furniture. We love projecting humanity onto non-human objects. So why did lifelike robots disturb us instead of comforting us? Mori studied this surprising phenomenon using many different objects, from things that bear no resemblance to humans all the way to an actual human being. And from his findings, he was able to draw what would become one of the most haunting graphs in robotics, one that he coined the Uncanny Valley. On the y-axis is Shinwakan, what Mori called familiarity or likability. Picture C-3PO from Star Wars, polite, refined, but unmistakably a machine. On the x-axis is human likeness, how much something feels like one of us. Once you move past the midpoint, the curve suddenly plunges. That's the valley. It's where charm gives way to unease. A robot that was once Superman 4 cute becomes iRobot creepy. No amount of Alan Tudyk can soften that empty, almost human stare. But why do we have these eerie feelings towards things that appear human but aren't human enough? Well, there are many theories that have been proposed as to why we experience the uncanny valley, one of which blames the existence of Neanderthals, our ancient rival species. Some people argue that humans developed advanced facial pattern recognition as a way to differentiate between the species. This argument I'll be honest, it sounds okay on the surface, but it quickly falls apart once you look at the available evidence. First, we have DNA evidence that proves that at least some of our human ancestors and Neanderthals were interbreeding. Quite a lot, actually. In fact, a lot of humans that are alive today have a tiny slice of Neanderthal DNA within them, so I don't necessarily know if it makes sense for us to develop a fear of the things that we were happily getting into bed with. There's also the fact that there are a lot of human groups that never had an interaction with Neanderthals, yet those humans today still experience the uncanny valley. So why would they evolve something for a threat that didn't exist for them? Another theory, one that I personally believe makes a lot more sense, is that the uncanny valley serves as a deterrent from humans like us and not some other species, but just humans who are either sick or lifeless. Although this isn't supported by any hard evidence, it just makes logical sense to me. Think about it. Before modern medicine, ancient humans were likely living side by side with the sick and even the dead, spreading disease and dying in huge numbers. So it makes sense that we evolved a kind of built-in warning system to deter us from other humans who are sick or dead. A pale face, a rigid body, a vacant stare. We evolved to see those cues as signals for danger long before we understood what germs and communicable diseases even were. By avoiding what looked sick or lifeless, we unconsciously protected ourselves. When you think of it like this, the uncanny valley does start to make sense. Look at these pictures again. What do you notice? They all have pale faces, rigid bodies, vacant stare, or even empty eyes. And you can see this expressed in ancient cultures from all over the world that never interacted with one another. Almost every ancient civilization has myths about the undead and zombies. Basically, people that are alive, but look like they're not. These figures embody that primal fear of sickness and decay. You can see the same empty eyes, the stiff movements, the uncanny resemblance to the living, but not quite. It's no coincidence that modern horror films borrow the same imagery. Zombies, ghosts, and uncanny human-like monsters terrify us because they tap into that ancient alarm system. Hollywood may dress it up with makeup and special effects, but underneath, it's the same instinct that told our ancestors, stay away, or you might not survive. Today, everyone's experience with the uncanny valley varies. Some people are desensitized from constant exposure to its unnerving effects. You might not be able to stand the sight of a Chucky doll, but your neighbor's collection could look something like this. Many are even born feeling it to a greater or lesser degree than average. We have no universally agreed metric to measure that innate dread, but experts are sure that most people do feel it. The uncanny valley has protected us for hundreds of thousands of years from things that could have been a lot more dangerous to us otherwise. It has protected us literally from death and decay. But what happens when it simply doesn't work anymore? When the dangers around us are so good at pretending to be human that it has completely bypassed our evolutionary defense mechanism? When can we no longer tell what is human versus what isn't? Here's the now infamous Will Smith eating spaghetti meme. There's a charm to old AI. This is the 2025 version. It's by no means a perfect depiction of the actor, but for 2 years worth of progress, this is a pretty big leap. And that makes you wonder, what could it look like a decade from now? If this tech suddenly became indistinguishable from a regular person, how do we cope? Right now on the internet, there's a non-zero chance that you've consumed and actually enjoyed content that was 100% generated by AI. I'm talking about AI-generated faces, voices, scripts, everything. And on the surface, they look human. They smile, stutter when they speak, blink, blush when they laugh. Our brains, once finely tuned to detect slight changes in our appearance and mannerisms, are now being tested by machines that can mimic us almost perfectly. If we lose that instinct, if our brains can no longer tell the difference between what's human and what's manufactured, then that door is wide open. Misinformation can spread unchecked. Trust collapses. Anyone could be framed. Anyone could be silenced. Anyone could have their own reality completely rewritten. It's a frightening possibility, an evolutionary safeguard honed across millennia, quietly going extinct in a single generation, leaving us defenseless against lies more powerful than we've ever faced. People can't trust themselves to determine what is real and what isn't anymore. Imagine a world where every voice, every face, every story can be fabricated with perfect precision. When lies are indistinguishable from truth, reality itself becomes negotiable. Who decides what's real when evidence can be forged and even memory can be altered? This is where the uncanny valley transforms from an evolutionary quirk into a philosophical abyss. It forces us to confront questions that we have been dodging for centuries. What makes us human? And what does it mean to trust? And if we can no longer rely on our own perception, then where does truth live? If it does at all. The uncanny valley has never been just about faces or robots. It was about survival, about knowing deep down what was safe and what wasn't. But if that instinct fades, we are left exposed. Not to predators in the dark or to sickness in our tribes, but to something quieter. Stories, images, voices, things that feel real enough to believe. And once we start doubting our own perception, it isn't just trust in others that erodes, it's trust in ourselves. All we can do is hope that with time we develop even sharper senses to be able to tell when something isn't quite right. After all, early telephone calls were seen as a ghost in the wire, but now that sounds silly at best. As we raise a generation of children on AI and robots with human likenesses, maybe they grow up with an even sharper sense to be able to distinguish fact from fiction. We can only hope, because the alternative is despair. If we remain on the current trajectory, humanity will end up in a really dark place. In fact, we're already seeing a lot of the dangers of human-like chatbots. OpenAI are currently facing a high-profile lawsuit claiming that ChatGPT encouraged a teen to commit suicide. The boy told ChatGPT of his plans, and the chatbot encouraged him to keep it a secret and to not tell anyone, while also giving him actionable steps to plot his own demise. And that's just text-based AI that many can admit isn't even that smart, but it's smart enough to maintain the illusion of competence that can drive real people towards terrifying ends. Imagine adding an indistinguishable human face and voice to it, and that effect multiplies in scale. As robotic human likenesses reach new milestones, the illusion will deeply affect interpersonal relationships moving forward, and it's not a question of if, but when. The 2014 film Ex Machina addresses this tastefully. Spoiler warning. In the movie, a billionaire selects an unaware employee for an experiment. He creates a female robot companion based on the employee's data, personality, and romantic preferences. Then he invites the young man to live with him. Over the course of a few days, the man starts to fall in love with this robot. She's influential, her expressions feel real. Her words don't betray the look in her eyes. By all perceptible accounts, this was a blossoming romance. That's what makes it so chilling, though, her gaze, her voice, and her trustworthiness. Convincing enough to fool a brilliant mind completely. Once that valley is gone, all that's left is deception. Ex Machina's take on crossing the valley is extremely relevant today. Most stories tend to portray robots valiantly defying their programming for love. However, that's not how it realistically works. If a robot is programmed for self-preservation and survival, it has a plethora of ways to achieve that goal. It could play nice and gain the trust of people around it. It could also strategically eliminate threats. There is no appeal to consciousness or a shared history like you'd get with fellow humans. When something looks human but pursues inhuman goals, it can lead to some terrifying consequences. Picture this. An AI is programmed to make as many paper clips as possible. Dedicated to this goal, it converts all matter in the universe into paper clips for maximum efficiency. As wild as it sounds, the AI is only doing its job effectively. The uncanny valley evolved as a kind of firewall, one primed to warn us when something looks like a healthy human but isn't. If technology can successfully smoothen that valley out, it would be a great loss for one of our strongest evolutionary filters. Perhaps achieving accurate human likeness from robots isn't the progress we are encouraged to cheer for. In reality, it might be the destruction of our final defense against danger. How can we adapt? Now, there is one side of this debate that offers a unique perspective. What would a future without the uncanny valley look like? If robots are able to mimic the full spectrum of emotions convincingly, well, we will need to make some tough choices. That human likeness will probably spur an unexpected reaction, one that protects and even grants certain human rights to machines. Without these laws, we would be shooting ourselves in the foot. What kind of world would we be living in otherwise? When certain humans are willing to hurt and break human-like robots, would we be comfortable? Well, that's highly unlikely. Spiritually, there are perspectives that acknowledge a higher ascension, even for robots. According to Masahiro Mori, robots possess the potential for enlightenment or Buddhahood. He envisioned a future where humans and robots could coexist peacefully, arguing that transcending worldly desires was a worthwhile objective for both. There's no guarantee on what the right direction will be. So we must ask ourselves, are we ascending to a new plane of coexistence, or are we walking blindly into the most perfect trap ever devised? One that we're intentionally designing to be impossible to spot by our own natural senses. I hope for the sake of us all that it's the former. The year is 2030. Your lover is a Labubu with the personality of a waifu created by Grok AI. Your best friend is a terrible-looking, always-listening necklace. And Meta is there to present you with ads right in front of your eyes, 24/7. Your landlord is an app that owns half the block. Your boss is a dashboard that pings at midnight about wellness. And the cereal box that you grew up with is now 2 inches thinner and somehow more expensive. Everything you used to own is now a rental. Everything you can afford is now worse quality. As you lay on your bed at night, you turn your head slowly to the bedside lamp beside you. The perspective of the lamp seems odd, like it's inverted. You stare at it for long enough until you realize the lamp is not real. The world is not real. The world ended in 2020, and we're all living in hell. This is obviously not literal, but it's the feeling that a lot of people have been experiencing. Like something fundamentally changed about our existence after the pandemic. Something that we haven't been able to recover from ever since. There's a moment everyone can point to in their lives. The last day in the office, the final commute home. The afternoon, the school pickup line was quiet in a way that it had never been. For many, the old world did not collapse with spectacle. It simply stopped. 2 weeks to flatten the curve became months of waiting, and waiting itself changed us. Young people in particular described the veil of ordinary life ripping open. No more proms, no more campus life, internships, first jobs, new houses, moving cities. Almost every rite of passage for young people swapped for a blinking cursor and a Google Meet link. For many, this was not just a reality check, but a complete upheaval. A realization that reality is nothing but a scaffolding held together by agreements that can be revoked without warning. And once you've taken a look beyond the veil, once you've stared at the fuzzy-looking lamp with a weird perspective, it's hard to unsee it. It's hard to go back to your old life with the new understanding that it was all a facade. Time itself changed shape. The monotony of lockdown turned days, even weeks, into complete blurs. When nothing changes around you, the brain stops trying to lay down boundaries, and so everything starts to blend into one another. And it feels like this feeling of time warping still hasn't healed. Ask almost everyone you know, and they'll tell you that time itself feels fundamentally different. It's been 6 years since the COVID-19 virus first broke out. Over half a decade. But it doesn't feel like that. It feels like the lockdown was at most 2 years ago. Perhaps one of the reasons for this is that those big moments that mark transitions in life still haven't come back, at least not for most people. Young people are struggling to find jobs now more than ever. People can no longer afford to move away from their parents' house, and young people are not as interested in marriage and having kids, presumably because of all the economic issues that the world is going through. So essentially, what you have is years of the same, with no milestones that give you that solid sense of time passing. Our brain records time in moments and seasons. When there are no moments to mark, time becomes a weird, continuous blob. When our shared reality is tampered with, we look to institutions to help guide us through the uncertainty. Unfortunately, this is one of the many casualties of life after the pandemic. In the wake of the pandemic, we were told it would only take 2 weeks, 15 days to slow the spread. Just a small pause and then life would spring back up. But 2 weeks became 2 months, and 2 months became nearly 2 years of on and off restrictions for a lot of people. Masks had a similar story. First, we were told not to buy medical masks and to save them for hospitals, since there was little evidence they worked for the general public. Just weeks later, the message flipped. Masks were recommended, then required in most places. Now, this is not a dig at the scientists who were trying to understand a once-in-a-lifetime disease. They were working with limited information and shifting data. But the way these messages landed with the public was simple. They sounded unsure. And if they were unsure about this, well, how could we trust them to be sure about anything? And I want to make it absolutely clear that this is not a fair comparison. Science is an ever-evolving field, and the fact that they were willing to change their position based on new information is the very reason we should trust them in the first place. But, sadly, when faced with this kind of scary situation, most people can't be rational and instead rely on their natural instincts to doubt everything. All of this, combined with the fact that most of us were bored indoors with nothing to do, gave rise to a new wave of misinformation, anti-science, and just plain old conspiracy theories. All of which still remain today. Just go online, and you'll see people with millions of followers discrediting the scientists on about every single thing you can imagine. I mean, RFK Jr. is now in power, telling people that Tylenol causes autism, which is just not true, by the way, in case you needed to hear that. Now, anti-science claims like anti-vax didn't start in 2020, but it definitely had exponential growth, especially with many countries mandating their citizens to take them. When people's personal freedoms are threatened, even if for the greater good, they do tend to fight back. And it wasn't just science. People lost trust in those in power too. Lockdowns were strict on all of us. Weddings were delayed. People attended funerals for their loved ones through Zoom. Families were separated for months. Yet it seemed like these rules weren't the same for the 1%. All around the world, top politicians, celebrities, and even the health minister of New Zealand were caught hosting lavish parties, taking family trips, and organizing weddings, while the rest of us were forced to stay inside. And what did they get? Most of them simply made silly apologies and got fines that are honestly less than slaps on the wrist for these ultra-wealthy people. It just made it clear to the entire world that even in a life and death situation, the people at the top still get to do whatever they want and will never face any real consequences for it. Once people had that realization, the mandates stopped sounding like a call to our shared humanity and started sounding like control. That trust was broken, and it has still not been repaired. I don't know if it ever can be repaired. And to make matters worse, while all of this was going on, millions of people were getting laid off. Thousands of small businesses had to shut down, while at the same time, companies boasted record profits. The big businesses hoarded most of the government bailouts, and the rich kept getting richer. While most people had to shrink their lives to fit inside small rooms, big tech was living large. If you sold anything digital, the pandemic was like stumbling on an entire planet filled with gold mines. Zoom, Netflix, YouTube, companies that were designed to foster digital entertainment and work, saw record numbers. But at the same time, local restaurants died quietly. Local gyms disappeared, and small businesses ran out of money. Wealth that would have been spread among many hands condensed into fewer. This would have been fine if the record amount of profits these big tech companies were getting somehow trickled down to the everyday people. Trickle-down economics, as the rich always like to point out. But it didn't. In fact, it was quite the opposite. While companies were boasting about record profits to their shareholders, they were also laying off thousands of workers and telling the ones that stayed that raises were impossible. All of this while still giving their consumers crappy services and increasing prices. Big tech companies had some of their biggest layoffs of all time in the few years just after the pandemic, numbers that have still not recovered and, in many places, are actually getting worse, no thanks to AI. For us consumers, everything we bought became worse. Shrinkflation moved from a nerdy term you'd hear from your economics professor to a household phrase. I'm sure you've noticed how everything you buy now seems to have reduced in size and/or quality, while at the same time increasing in price. Companies discovered they could grow revenue without making anything better through subscriptions. The rise of the subscription model has exploded since the pandemic. Entire industries pivoted from buy it once to rent this forever. Software became a subscription. Printers wanted ink memberships. Cars flirted with monthly fees for features already built into the seat that you are sitting on. Repairs moved behind proprietary walls, so you don't own a thing so much as lease the right to keep it working. The slogan might as well be, you will own less and pay more often. Even where nothing shrank on the shelf, the service shrank around it. Skimpflation is the quiet downgrade you feel everywhere. Longer wait times, fewer staff in offices, support that routes you through a chat bot that apologizes in perfect lowercase and solves nothing. Restaurants added temporary surcharges that never went away. Convenience fees show up on tickets that you bought yourself. And just when your total makes you flinch, a screen swivels around to ask for a 25% tip on a bottle of water. It's not just inflation, it's the feeling that the customer experience is being carved up for parts. Housing is the clearest example of how that logic rewrote daily life. When borrowing was cheap, institutional buyers treated homes like houses in Monopoly. They bought at scale, rented at scale, and priced at scale. Today, a starter home has become a story that you tell about your parents. The story that we were sold was that economic growth would reach us all, that tax breaks and government bailouts for the rich would trickle down to better benefits and products for the poor. But the reality is we have people well on their way to becoming trillionaires, while half of the world doesn't have access to clean and drinkable water. What do you do when all of this is happening so relentlessly? When every day you wake up, you're hit with yet another terrible news story on how the world is about to end and there's nothing that we can do about it. When the lockdowns came, all we had were our devices. We used them to pass the time, connect with our loved ones, stay productive with school and work. This prolonged period of spending time on our devices created habits that still linger on to this day. Coupled with the fact that the real world just feels more grim now, you can see why a lot of young people sought comfort in their screens. These were the same tools that got us through the pandemic, so they became the default. Short-form video took over because it's easy, and it feels good in the moment. Swipe, laugh, learn something, swipe again. The problem is what it did to our attention spans. 3 minutes now feels long. Standing in line without checking your phone feels hard. And the sad part is that the comfort and joy that short-form content used to bring us has now been replaced by the terrifying realities of the world that we live in. Doom scrolling. You feel anxious, so you check the news to feel informed, but the headlines make you feel more anxious, and that anxiety makes you scroll to find out more. It's a vicious cycle that leaves you feeling angry, worried, and outraged. The apps that were originally designed for funny dances and laughs have now turned into echo chambers, constantly reminding you of the sad state of the world. And because we humans evolved to respond more to negative stimuli to protect ourselves from danger, doom scrolling has become a way for these tech companies to keep you on their platforms for longer. And this, in turn, has also led to the rise of rage bait content, where people do the most disturbing things because they know that getting you angry is an easier way to get your attention than making you smile. As if all of this wasn't bad enough, OpenAI released ChatGPT in 2022. In just 3 short years, the app currently has around 4.61 billion visits every single month, and anywhere between 800 million and 1 billion active users. Slowly, human interactions are being replaced by AI, which is what has led us to this point where companies are advertising a necklace that can be your best friend, and a Labubu powered by AI can keep you company. Yeah. A lot of people are now spending more time chatting with these chatbots than they do actual humans. When OpenAI released GPT-5, a model that was less friendly, thousands of people complained online about how the company deactivated their friends. The outrage was so bad that the creator of ChatGPT himself, Sam Altman, had to openly come out and say he was genuinely worried about people forming social relationships with ChatGPT, even though he still did what the people wanted and rolled back out the friendlier version of the app. Now, none of this is about blaming individuals. It's easy to see people making friends with AI and laugh. But the truth is, we all adapted to the environment we were given. None of us have ever been in a world this much changed before, and we all have different coping mechanisms. But all of this just shows you how otherworldly the world feels right now. It's why a lot of people say that we're living in the darkest timeline, because Genuinely, it feels like there was a cosmic change, and that the world we're in right now is fundamentally different than it was before the pandemic. And honestly, even if we might not be in an alternate universe, the world has changed fundamentally, and it's never going to go back to what it was before 2020. There is no after the pandemic, because we are still feeling its effects. Long COVID in particular is still real for a significant number of people. For them, it's years of fatigue, brain fog that makes mundane tasks feel like walking up a mountain, constant crashes from doing the most random things. It's a real and painful problem that thousands of people are currently facing, and it's also a metaphor for how life feels post-2020. The mental and emotional fatigue, the brain fog, the constant rage. If all of this sounds like a sermon about damnation, that is because the metaphor is vivid. You think it, you see it, and you feel it. In 2020, the world we all knew ended, and we woke somewhere way, way worse. Sure, it's not physically burning with fire and brimstone, but it is a place with fewer guardrails, where you can do everything right and still lose. If you find yourself longing for 2019, think about what you actually miss, and you'll see it's not just the prices of things or touching grass. It's the comfort of thinking that certain things were guaranteed, that the lights would stay on simply because they always had, that it can never get that bad. Unfortunately, now the guardrails are gone. It can get that bad. In fact, it can get much, much worse. But where does that leave us? We can't flip a switch and go back to 2019, but now that we realized what changed, maybe we can start to slowly rebuild. We'll never be able to get back to what is burnt, but perhaps we can make something better out of its ashes, and we can do that little by little. Start small and local. Trust won't come back because someone tweets a statement. It comes back when people show up in person and actually talk to one another. Go to that school meeting. Ask a question at the town hall without trying to score points. Join a local group that does one useful thing for the community, coaching, food bank runs, neighborhood cleanups. If you lead anything, follow the rules that you set for the group. When communicating, say what you know, what you don't know, and what could change your mind. Put boundaries back on your time. The mental blur of time passing will not fix itself. You have to pick a few simple rules to get your time back. Things like no phone for the first hour of the day, devices away at dinner, reading one chapter of a book before going to bed. Reintroduce low-stakes rituals that bring joy and community back into your life. Weekly dinner with friends, taking a walk every evening, planning a games night once a month. By scheduling these events, your time starts to have meaning again. Make your identity harder to knock over. Don't hang your whole sense of self on one job title, one platform, or one company. Keep a second skill alive. Keep a small emergency fund if you can. Build a network that exists offline, people who know you outside of your metrics. If you run a business, plan for shocks, not just for perfect quarters. If you work for one, remember, work isn't a family. It's a workplace. Keep your life raft and don't burn out trying to prove yourself. Vote and push for basics that actually help. More homes where people can work and study, fewer junk fees, and clearer pricing. Right to repair so the stuff that you buy lasts. Public health that treats uncertainty honestly and respects good faith disagreement. Reward leaders who admit when they're wrong and can explain why they've changed course. Vote especially in smaller elections. Presidency elections are always making the loudest noise, and for sure they are very important. No one's saying they're not. But equally, or sometimes even more important, are the smaller elections. Your HOA president, the school board, city council, all these Little things are what decide what gets built in your immediate neighborhood. It teaches how policing works in your state, what kids learn, how libraries are funded, even simple things like noise and parking rules that can affect your everyday life, much more than a presidential decree. Rebuild the everyday muscles. Invite people over and cook something that takes longer than it should. Visit someone who can't get out easily. Learn one hands-on skill that doesn't depend on an app. Give a little time or money to a cause that won't trend, but matters to someone whose name you actually know. Our opening scene is still our reality. The necklace is still listening. The ads are still there, and the cereal box is still smaller. But how we respond to these realities is still up to us. We don't control the existence of the feed, the prices, or the next curveball. But we do control how we spend our attention, how we treat each other, and where we put our effort. We might be in hell, yes. But if we all work together, we will definitely be able to extinguish its flames. AI experts from all around the world believe that given its current rate of progress, by 2027, we may hit the most dangerous milestone in human history, the point of no return, when AI could stop being a tool and start improving itself beyond our control. A moment when humanity may never catch up. Up until I was 15, the way I found new music was through friends or songs I heard in the background of my favorite TV shows or movies. This could be a really slow process if you're like me and have a somewhat unconventional taste in music. And so it was no surprise that I would only have a few new songs in my playlist every few months. But in the last few years, that has completely changed. You see, Spotify has been able to identify my tastes remarkably well. And with the AI Spotify DJ, it's been scarily accurate. Spotify seems to know what I like better than even some of my closest friends. Now, this is one of the more subtle uses of AI. I don't think I need to go over how insane AI has become in the past few years. Everything from generated text to art, music, and even 4K videos that you can control in real time right now. We humans are very ill-equipped when it comes to understanding such exponential growth. We simply never evolved to do so. Animals, predators, and prey, we all move at a relatively consistent, constant rate. There's no acceleration. Technological progress, however, does, and it's only getting faster. Now, as it turns out, this exponential growth means we might be stepping into some very uncharted territory in the near future. Wow. If technology continues to get better and better at its current pace, we will soon reach a stage where it's not only matching us, but surpassing the intelligence of us humans. Couple that with an ability to learn and an incentive to survive, and you don't know what will happen next. This is referred to as the technological singularity. It's a term borrowed from astrophysics. Singularity refers to a tipping point beyond which all laws that are currently known simply fall apart. Like how the laws of physics fall apart beyond the singularity of a black hole. A technological singularity is a similar tipping point when technological progress is so overwhelming that we'll no longer be in control of it or the things that it might lead to. In 1875, Karl Landsteiner, an Austrian biologist, noted that when a man was given a blood transfusion from another animal, the foreign blood tended to clump up in the blood vessels of the man, which would cause shock, which ultimately leads to death. This and years of research that followed led him to discover blood groups, for which he was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1930. Today, he's remembered as the father of blood transfusion medicine, and we have him to thank for being able to donate and receive blood safely. When there is a technological singularity, scientists predict that computers will be able to make life-changing, Nobel Prize-winning discoveries just like this every 5 seconds. Now, that may seem like an incredible future or even a potentially life-threatening one. And that's exactly why the prospect of a technological singularity is so complicated. On the one hand, it may seem like rapidly progressing technology actually enslave humanity, but it also has an immense potential to improve human life, and this potential is the reason why it is being developed so rapidly. Now, there are enormous incentives to devote even more research and resources into the development of artificial intelligence, economic and otherwise. For example, it can help companies curate products each customer is more likely to buy, something practically impossible to do man for man. They can predict when demand is going to be low to prevent waste. It can also conduct research faster than any human ever has or ever could. These innovations can lead to other less inspiring changes in human society too, after all. If scientific research can be done with a computer, what use is there for researchers anymore? If cars can drive themselves and nanobots can repair organs and 3D printers can literally print bridges, are all jobs simply going to be replaced? We are already staring this reality in the face. According to the IMF, around 40% of jobs globally could be impacted by AI. In advanced economies, the figure is closer to 60%. OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT, estimate that 80% of the US workforce may see at least 10% of their tasks affected by AI, and around 19% of workers could see 50% or more of their tasks impacted, especially office and knowledge workers. If your company believes you bring less than 50% of the company, you're either going to be let go so fewer humans can do more tasks, or you'll earn a lot less for doing the same work you were doing before. Without thorough consideration or government intervention, we may be headed for unemployment rates the likes of which humanity has never seen. And if recent events haven't made it clear, it's not just about the economy or salaries, but also about the meaning that most of us tend to derive from our work. You know, not doing anything, as it turns out, is really boring. Okay, well, sometimes it is kind of nice. We've established that technological progress is not slowing down anytime soon. What happens when computers replace not only our labor, but also our intellect? What happens when they can mimic intelligence and learn on their own?
It could be terrible, and it could be great. It's not clear.
Right.
But one thing is for sure, we will not control it.
Go is arguably the most complex board game in existence. Its goal is simple: surround more territory than your opponent. This game has been played by humans for the past 2,500 years, and it's thought to be the oldest board game still being played today. However, it's not only humans that are playing this game now. In 2016, Google DeepMind's AlphaGo beat 18-time world champion Lee Sedol in 4 out of 5 games. Now, normally, a computer beating a human at a game like chess or checkers wouldn't be that impressive. But Go is different. Go can't be solved by brute force. Go can't be predicted. There are over 10 to the 170 moves possible in Go. To put that into perspective, there are only 10 to the 80 atoms in the observable universe. AlphaGo was trained using data from real human Go games. It ran through millions of games, learned the techniques used, and even made up some new ones that no one had ever seen. And this alone is very impressive. However, what many people don't know is that only a year after AlphaGo's victory over Lee Sedol, a brand new AI called AlphaGo Zero beat the original AlphaGo. Not in 4 out of 5 games, not in 5 out of 5 games, not 10 out of 10 games, but 100 to 0, 100 games in a row. The most impressive part? It learned how to play with 0 human interaction. This technique is more powerful than any previous version, but why? It isn't restricted to human knowledge. No data was given, no historical figures were given. With just the bare bone rules, AlphaGo Zero surpassed the previous in only 40 days of learning. In only 40 days, it surpassed over 2,500 years of strategy and knowledge. It only played against itself, and it is now regarded as the best Go player in the world, even though it isn't human. But wait, if this AI learned how to play without any human interaction, made up strategies on its own, and then beat us with those strategies, then that means there's more non-human knowledge about Go than there is human. And if we continue to develop artificial intelligence, then there's going to be more and more non-human intelligence that we just don't have access to. Eventually, there's going to be a point where we represent the minority of intelligence, maybe even a very minuscule amount. Well, that's fine though, we can just turn it off, right? It's a thought, but think. When modern-day humans began to take over the planet, why didn't the chimps and the Neanderthals turn us off? If this artificial intelligence becomes super intelligent and learns through and is connected to the internet, we can't just shut down the entire internet. There is no off switch. So what happens if we end up stuck with an AI that is constantly and exponentially getting smarter than we are? What if it gets to a point that humans get in the way and the AI hits the off switch on us? When people think of AI, they tend to think of super intelligent AI that serves the human race, but could also end us at a moment's notice. But is this really going to happen? Pop culture, mostly movies, tend to depict AI not as benevolent creations, but rather as robots with malicious intent, except for Tars in Interstellar. He's very cool. There's a lot more to AI than you might think. There are many different types that serve different purposes. Artificial narrow intelligence, also known as weak AI, is the only form of artificial intelligence that humanity has created so far. Yes, even the most advanced video generating AI tools fall in this category. That makes it sound kind of bad, kind of lame, but trust me, it does a very good job at what it is programmed to do. Narrow AI was created for the sole purpose of handling one task. It's the kind of AI that AlphaGo is. Narrow AI is good at speech and image recognition, and also at playing games like chess or Go, or even complex ones like Dota 2. At the International 2017 World Championship, OpenAI's artificial intelligence destroyed pro player Dendi 2-0. Much like AlphaGo Zero, it wasn't taught how to play the game. It played out millions of years worth of one-on-one matches against itself and then learned on its own. It started out barely knowing how to walk, and eventually it surpassed human-level skill. So this is how Spotify creates daily mixes for you based on the music you listen to, and how Amazon learns from and teaches itself your buying habits to suggest you new products. But it seems an uncommon occurrence where these AI teach themselves how to do the task at hand. How is that even possible? It's through a process called machine learning. Machine learning is the science of trying to get computers to learn and think like we humans do. It's essentially the same way that babies learn. We start off as small, screaming sacks of meat, but over time we improve our learning. We take in more data and more information from observations and interactions. And most of the time, we end up pretty smart. The most popular technique to make a computer mimic a human brain is known as a neural network. Our brains are very good at solving problems, but each neuron in your brain is only responsible for solving a very minuscule part of any one problem. You can think of it as an assembly line, where each neuron has a certain job in order to completely solve a problem. In order to say that someone is alive, they have to either have a pulse or they must be breathing, not necessarily both at the same time. This yellow dot represents a neuron in a neural network. It functions just like a neuron in your brain does. It takes information and then gives an output. If this neuron takes in the information that says, hey, this person has a pulse and is breathing, then the neuron deciphers this information and says, okay, this person is alive. It learns to analyze situations where the human would be declared alive if breathing or having a pulse, and situations where the human would be dead where neither of those are true. That's essentially a bare bones explanation of how it works. Of course, no neural network is really this simple. Many have millions of parameters and are much more complex than just this one-layer network. The world is full of sounds, visuals, and data. We take in all of this to form our view of reality. However, as more and more complex topics show up with more and more data, it becomes harder for humans to analyze this alone. This is where machine learning comes in handy. Machines can not only analyze data given to them, but also learn from it and adapt their own view of it. Let's go back to AlphaGo Zero. In only 40 days, it surpassed thousands of years of strategy and knowledge and even made up some of its own strategies. How did it do this so quickly? Biological neurons in your brains operate at about 200 hertz, and that's fine for us. But modern transistors operate at over 2 gigahertz, an entire order of magnitude faster. Neurons in your brain travel to what are known as axons, moving at about 100 meters per second. That's fast and gives us good reaction time, but it's only about a third of the speed of sound. Computers, however, can transmit information at the speed of light, 300 million meters per second. That's quite a big difference between our brain's capabilities and our computers. In just 1 week, a computer can do 20,000 years worth of human-level research or simulations. A brain has to fit inside of your head. There's a limit to how much space it can take up, but a computer could fit an entire room or even an entire building. Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI, is AI with more than a single purpose. AGI is almost at or equal to human-level intelligence. And this is where we're trying to get, but there is a problem here. The more we search into it, the harder it seems to be able to achieve. Think about when you perceive things. When someone asks you a complicated question, you have to sort through a ton of unrelated thoughts and observations and then articulate a concise response. This isn't easy for computers. Humans can't process information at the speed of light like computers can, but we can plan things, and we can think of smart ways to solve problems without having to use brute force. Getting a computer to human-level thinking is really, really hard. Humans can create, invent, build societies, play games, and laugh. These are very hard things to teach a computer. How can you teach a computer to create something that doesn't exist or has never even been thought of? And what would even be its incentive to do so? I personally believe AGI, or what is referred to as strong AI, is the most important artificial intelligence to be created. Here's why. Machine learning is exponential. It starts off slow, but then there's a tipping point where things begin to speed up drastically. The difference between weak AI and strong AI is millions of times larger than the difference between strong AI and super intelligent AI. Once we have AGI that can function like a human being, it may help us reach superintelligence in only a few months or even weeks. But here comes another big problem. Many people see intelligence as a graph. An ant is here, a mouse is here, the average human, say, here. And Einstein is just floating a little bit above that. If you asked most people where a superintelligent AI would lie, they'd probably put it just above Einstein. But that's not the case. AI might not yet be at human-level intelligence, but when it gets there, it's not going to stop. It'll zoom past, becoming more advanced until eventually that graph looks unrecognizable. This is what is referred to as the technological singularity. When AI becomes so advanced that there's an explosion of knowledge and information, some beyond human understanding. If we make a super intelligent AI, it could improve upon itself. Each time it gets smarter in a short period. The first recreation may take a month, the second, a week, the third, a day, until it's billions of times smarter than all of humanity. To empathize what would happen to our species during such an event, you could simply look at what history tells us about how a more intelligent species, us humans, treats its less intelligent counterparts. Monkeys, you know? The same monkeys that we caged up, killed, ran any and all tests on, and had no ethical qualms about it until very recently. Yeah, those monkeys. Sam Harris provides an analogy in this regard to help us visualize how we might be treated based on our own past behavior. He draws in the relationship we humans have with ants by saying that we don't hate them, we don't go out of our way to harm them. In fact, sometimes we take pains not to harm them. We carefully step over them on the sidewalk, but whenever their presence seriously conflicts with one of our goals, like an anthill in your beautiful backyard or termites within the walls of your kitchen, we annihilate them without a single thought. This rather troubling thought has a lot of people concerned about the way in which we should be progressing towards this singularity. The best thing we could do as we head into the singularity is to ensure that AI develops into an ethically sound ecosystem. Instead of using it to spy, scam, and steal from people, which in reality is what it's currently being used to do. Then, there are also concerns about defining when the singularity has been reached. What is consciousness? How do we know when machines have it? What is intelligence? What is its value to us? What is art and what isn't? All of these questions need to be answered for us to know when machines are indeed more intelligent. This is capable of triggering a modern renaissance that is not simply technological but also philosophical, in that it causes us to redefine the human experience like never before. It can also help us reflect on what we, as the most intelligent species, have done to our planet and its other inhabitants. Super intelligent AI isn't like the software that we know today. We tend to think of software as something that we program to follow our rules. But with highly advanced AI and machine learning, the AI teaches itself how and what life is, as well as how to improve it. After a while, there's no need for human interaction. Perhaps humans would even slow it down. We have to be careful. As Sam Harris said, the first thing you want to do is not give it access to the internet. You'd cage it, tempt it, and see if it tries to get out. This is called a honeypot strategy. But here's the danger. Just because we make a super intelligent AI doesn't mean it's going to be wise. Intelligence isn't the same as wisdom. Intelligence is all about making mistakes, acquiring knowledge, and then solving problems. Wisdom is applying knowledge in efficient and moral ways. If we told AI to solve world hunger, the quickest solution would be to eliminate all life so that no one is hungry. But that's obviously not what we want. So we need to teach AI human-like values, a moral code. In a way, we'd want it to be like a super intelligent human cyborg. And in many ways, humans already are cyborgs. We use phones, extensions of ourselves. They answer any questions instantly. The only problem is our input is too slow. If we created a high bandwidth link between the brain and the internet, we'd be connected to everyone and everything instantly. This is what Neuralink aims to do, a neural lace. Your brain has two systems: the limbic system, which are emotions, survival, and the cortex, which is all about problem solving and critical thinking. Neuralink wants to create a third layer, AI. It would massively increase our capabilities, giving us eidetic memory and instant access to all knowledge. People may prefer this way of living to the alternative, eventually even abandoning their biological selves. But this also raises problems. How do we program consciousness? We don't even know what it is yet. How do we program something like fear? Could a machine really love? And if it can love, could it also hate? These are real fears. Will super intelligent AI be pleasant or hateful? Could it even be either? And is it even necessary? Sure, it could have all of the information in the world, but so do we. Who's to say it wouldn't adopt radical views? And what if AI learned to lie? What if computing progress slows down? These are also possibilities. But if we do surpass the barrier, the upside for us could be tremendous. AI could make humanity billions of times better, or it could be used against us as a weapon. If it ran for a week, it could make 20,000 years of progress. 6 months, 500,000 years. In the wrong hands, the consequences of that would be enormous. Every Google search gives AI our thoughts and fears. AI already recognizes faces, voices, language, and soon will be translating seamlessly. This knowledge train could continue until it consumes all data. But how near is all of this? Ray Kurzweil, renowned inventor and futurist, has said that we may reach the singularity by 2049. He attributes this oddly specific date to what he calls price-performance calculations per consistent dollar. I'll explain. He plotted these said numbers from 1980 through 2050. In 1981 and 2015, those numbers were roughly where he predicted them to be. Now, others are skeptical of such claims. Most notable amongst them are Noam Chomsky, widely regarded as the father of modern linguistics, and one of the most cited scholars alive. What makes his perspective interesting is that he perhaps possesses a deeper understanding of language than most of us. This is a very important part of creating a generally intelligent machine, since understanding how we communicate with other humans will help us communicate with other potentially conscious machines. But here's the thing. While Kurzweil's 2049 projection does sound far off, researchers in 2025 are saying that the timeline might actually be much, much shorter, possibly less than 2 years away. Ben Goertzel, founder of SingularityNet, has suggested that AGI could emerge by 2027, followed rapidly by artificial superintelligence, or ASI. The AI Futures Project, led by researcher Daniel Coca, has even outlined scenarios where fully autonomous AI surpasses human capabilities across the board by late 2027. Mo Gaudat, a former Google executive, also warns of a 2027 arrival, though he emphasizes the risk of social upheaval if the transition isn't managed carefully. And it's not just these individual voices. A large-scale survey of AI researchers puts the chance of machines outperforming humans at every task by 2027 at about 10%, climbing sharply to 50% by 2047. So, while Kurzweil's long-range vision places the singularity decades away, many experts working at the cutting edge today warn that 2027 may be the true breaking point, the year when artificial intelligence crosses the threshold from tool to uncontrollable force. Max Tegmark, an American-Swedish from MIT, is interested in investigating the risk of extinction from artificial intelligence. He likes to use the analogy of when man first discovered fire. It was a wonderful discovery that has paved the way for modern life, but it hasn't always been safe. Fires have caused lots of death, pain, and suffering in the process. But we are where we are because we were able to learn from our mistakes and devise things like fire escapes and fire extinguishers. AI might be the same at the start, but the only difference here is that we only have one shot at this. It's all or nothing. If AI lights a fire, we may never be able to extinguish it in the hopes of a next time. But there are critics who doubt that this is how the future will actually play out. Unlike Chomsky, they don't doubt the exponential progress or its ability to mimic human-like computation in the future. Instead, they doubt whether the future will be so aggressively against our survival. They say that while a technological singularity is coming, that we shouldn't fear it. Instead, we should embrace the progress that it could bring to us. Such is also the perspective of Garry Kasparov, widely considered as one of the best chess players of all time. He was on the other side when IBM's Deep Blue finally beat humanity's best at the game that they had invented. Garry believes that instead of seeing this as a man versus machine contest, we should take it as an opportunity to realize the potential of augmentation. There's definitely more comfort in thinking about it like this, considering we've been augmenting ourselves with technology for decades now, first with things like calculators and more recently mobile phones. After watching a recent Apple keynote, it mentioned that Apple CPUs have gotten over 100 times faster in recent years and their GPUs over 1,000 times faster. Singularity doesn't have to be an apocalyptic mess where every moving piece of metal is trying to kill us. It doesn't have to be a deceptive reality where no one and nothing can be trusted. It can simply be a reality where we are free to explore other dimensions of the human experience and engage in our creative pursuits. Not to put food on the table, but simply for the sake of them. In both of the major criticisms against the idea of a technological singularity, neither party actually denies that it's coming. They're saying that it's not coming anytime soon, or that it's not going to be as bad as you think it is when it does. But you could argue that the technological singularity is nearer than we think, and it's going to be much, much worse than we anticipated. Well, what happens then? Does it really matter how we as humans prepare? What policies could we possibly come up with? Whatever the answer, one thing remains the same. It's coming. And if I were you, I'd get ready. In the summer of 2025, TikToker Kendra Hilty began posting a rather disturbing series of videos, claiming that her psychiatrist had manipulating her into falling in love with him. For a mental health professional, this is a serious allegation. Dating a patient is an absolute no-go, so people were rightfully intrigued by the story and were paying close attention. But then the more videos she made, the less believable her story became. And before long, what started out as a potentially grave medical misconduct case became something far darker. The first public spectacle and case study in what is now a disturbing new reality. One that has led to cases from Kendra doxing an innocent psychiatrist for just doing his job, all the way to claiming the life of a teenager who just wanted to do his homework. This is the terrifying rise of AI psychosis.